Some people just vanish. Not metaphorically, literally. One day they're there, working, talking, living. The next day, nothing. As if they never existed, and no one looks too hard. Because these people were already invisible before they disappeared. This happens today. At borders, on migration routes, in job promises that never materialize. But here's a detail almost no one knows. This used to be legal, systematized, industrial, and it wasn't in Africa, it was in Europe. It was white women and children, and it lasted way longer than you think. When you hear human trafficking, what comes to mind? Probably something that happens far away, right? Poor countries, foreign mafias, distant realities. But what if I told you that between the late 19th and early 20th centuries, while Europe saw itself as the pinnacle of civilization, thousands of European women, Polish, Russian, French, German, were being sold like cattle, literally put on ships, catalogued, distributed like living merchandise to brothels in South America, the Middle East, Asia. This has a name. They called it white slavery. And the silence around it says a lot about what we choose to remember and what we prefer to forget. Hold on to that. By the end, you'll understand why this didn't stay in the past. Let's go back a bit. Europe, 1880. The continent was in the middle of the Industrial Revolution. Cities growing, factories smoking. Progress was the word of the day. But progress for whom? Because while some got rich, others disappeared. Young women, most between 14 and 25, orphans, peasant girls, factory workers with no prospects. They received offers. Come work as a seamstress in Buenos Aires. Be a governess in Alexandria. There are opportunities in Shanghai. It seemed legitimate, had letterhead, sometimes even respectable intermediaries. Professional placement agencies, formal contracts, the kind of thing that makes you think, oh, this must be serious. It wasn't. What these women discovered, usually too late, is that the destination wasn't any office, it was a brothel, and the contract they signed became debt, unpayable debt, ship passage, lodging, food, clothes, all charged at absurd prices. They arrived owing the equivalent of years of work, and then the cycle began. Work to pay the debt, which never decreased, which only grew. And here's the problem. This wasn't a secret. Newspapers published it. Social reformers denounced it. The League of Nations, yes, that international organization created to maintain world peace, even produced extensive reports on the trafficking of white women. But you know what changed? Almost nothing. Because when you dig a little deeper, you realize there were people profiting, and they weren't just pimps or street criminals. They were shipping companies that transported these women knowing exactly what was happening. They were port authorities who looked the other way for bribes. They were governments that preferred not to touch the subject because touching it is work. Just like today, when everyone knows modern slavery exists, but consuming is more comfortable than investigating a product's origin. Let me show you how it worked. Phase 1. Recruitment. Agents, often women, because they generated more trust, circulated through poor villages. They offered hope wrapped in beautiful promises. You can be someone. You can support your family. You can have a better future. Who resists that when you have nothing? Phase 2. Travel. They boarded, often accompanied by a protector or travel agent. They crossed the Atlantic, the Mediterranean, the Indian Ocean. Long journeys, weeks, sometimes months. During this time, some already began to realize something was wrong. But what to do? They're in the middle of the ocean, don't speak the destination's language, have no money to return. They're trapped before they even arrive. Phase 3. Arrival. They disembark. Someone is waiting for them. Not family, not a legitimate employer. It's the brothel owner or his intermediary. The tone changes. The mask falls. You owe me X. The amount is astronomical, unreachable. And then comes the most brutal part. The violence isn't always physical. Often it's psychological. If you try to escape, your family will know what you did here. The police won't help you. You're an illegal immigrant. You have nowhere to go. Fear, shame, isolation. The perfect prison has no bars. It has silence. But here's what almost no one realizes. This system didn't work alone. It needed social complicity. It needed people to look at these women and think, well, they chose this. Or, prostitutes have always existed. Or simply, not my problem. Dehumanization, the oldest tool in the book. Because when you can convince society that certain people don't deserve compassion, that they're less than, you can do anything to them, and no one will care enough to stop you. If you like questioning comfortable narratives and understanding how patterns from the past still echo today, subscribe. Here we don't romanticize history, we dissect it. Let's talk scale. Between 1880 and 1939, that's almost 60 years, it's estimated that tens of thousands of European women were trafficked. Some historians say 50,000, others 100,000. The truth? No one knows for sure, because many simply disappeared from the records. Buenos Aires became one of the main destinations. Argentina had loose laws, a growing economy, high demand. There were entire streets dedicated to brothels where Polish, Russian and Romanian women worked under coercion. Alexandria, Egypt, Shanghai, China, Rio de Janeiro, Johannesburg, Bombay, global routes, organised networks, immense profit. And you know what's most disturbing? Many of these women never returned, died far from home, were buried without names, without family, without anyone who remembered they existed, invisible in life, invisible in death. Now you might be thinking, okay, but what about the authorities and the laws? Did anyone try to stop this? They tried, sort of. In 1904, the International Agreement for the Suppression of the White Slave Traffic was signed. Pompous name, noble intention. Result? Pathetic. Why? Because the agreement depended on voluntary cooperation between countries, had no force of law, no effective oversight. It was basically a piece of paper saying, it would be nice if you stopped doing this. And many countries simply didn't stop. Because, and this is where everything starts to go wrong, to really stop, you need to admit the problem exists. And admitting the problem exists is admitting you failed to protect your own citizens. It's admitting that your civilized country is complicit in barbarism, and that hurts national pride. So it was easier to deny, minimize, say they were isolated cases, that they were women of easy virtue who put themselves in that situation. Blame the victim. Always works. Take a deep breath, because now comes the uncomfortable part. This pattern, recruitment through false promises, exploitation via debt, institutional complicity, silencing of victims, didn't die in the 20th century. Today we call it human trafficking, and according to the UN, it's the third most lucrative criminal activity in the world behind only drugs and weapons. It moves billions of dollars a year. Women and children continue to be deceived with job offers, continue to be transported across borders, continue to be trapped by fabricated debts, continue to be made invisible, and society continues doing what it's always done, looking the other way, because it's easier to believe this doesn't happen here, that this is a problem of other countries, that if she's in that situation, she did something to deserve it. The same logic, just with new packaging. There's a cruel detail in all this. When the trafficking was of white women, there was at least some public scandal. Reformers mobilized, newspapers covered it, treaties were signed, even if ineffective. But when the victims are of other ethnicities, African, Asian, Latin American, the silence is even greater, the indifference deeper, as if some lives were worth more indignation than others. And this tells us something brutal about how we value people, not by what they suffer, but by who they are. Let me show you something. When you look at the structure of trafficking, yesterday or today, you realize it doesn't survive alone. It needs an ecosystem. It needs poverty. Because people with options don't fall for false promises. It needs inequality. Because the bigger the gap between rich and poor, the more people willing to risk everything for a chance. It needs corruption. Because inspectors who earn peanuts are easier to bribe. It needs indifference. Because as long as society looks at these victims as others, as less human, nothing really changes. And here's the truth no one wants to hear. We fuel this system. When we consume without questioning. When we vote for politicians who cut oversight budgets. When we share memes about, if she wanted it, her problem. When we choose comfort over conscience. The machine doesn't run alone. It needs fuel. And the fuel is us. There's a question that haunts me. Why is this chapter of history so little known? It's not for lack of documentation. There are records, there are reports, there are testimonies. It's because it's not convenient to remember. Because remembering means admitting that enlightened Europe wasn't so enlightened. It means recognizing that while some built colonial empires in the name of civilization, others were selling their own women as merchandise. It means looking in the mirror and seeing the contradiction, seeing the hypocrisy, seeing that the discourse of moral superiority was always just discourse. And that hurts, so it's easier to forget, erase, move on. But forgetting has a price, because what isn't remembered repeats itself. I'll leave you with a reflection. How many people today are invisible to you? How many times have you seen someone in a clearly strange situation, too young working in suspicious conditions, person who never goes out alone, fear in their eyes, and simply moved on? Because it's not your problem. Because you have your own concerns. Because interfering is complicated. I understand. It's human. But it was exactly like this that thousands of women disappeared in the 20th century. Not from lack of evidence, but from excessive indifference. And it's exactly like this that it continues happening today. History doesn't punish those who fail. It punishes those who think they're immune to repeating the same mistakes.